Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Church Security Answer Man. I want to get right to what we need to talk about today, which is when does routine end, your ministry and your normal programs day to day, and when does action need to begin? We're shaking hands and we're welcoming people, that kind of thing. And when does that stop? And when do we switch into another gear? The reason why this is so important for us to talk about is because most all the time, every week, week in, week out, however often you're serving in the security ministry or you're functioning as that as an usher or greeter, whatever it looks like, most of the time, week in, week out, we're in this love on people, welcome them, minister to them, when all of a sudden we're faced with somebody who's beginning to get angry, beginning to get upset with us, or they're showing signs of mental health issues, or maybe they've got a stick or some kind of weapon. And we will tend to stay in the ministry part too long, trying to love on them before we kick into action. And it's normal. So let's talk about that today. Our brains are, the limbic portion of our brain, which deals with survival, is trying to help us survive and trying to make up stuff as we go, or it relies on our planning. So it's going to freeze for a moment when it realizes something's going wrong, and then it begins to evaluate, what should I do? When I begin to come out of that freeze, what should I do now? What kind of action am I going to take? Well, that's what I want to make sure and talk to you about, is because if you're in the ministry all the time and you're not thinking about taking action, and when that break should begin to occur, you'll wait too long. You'll wait till somebody's actually throwing a punch or somebody's actually coming at you. And I don't want that for you. So the limbic portion of the brain needs material ahead of time. We need to discuss this. We need to plan ahead for those kind of things. So if you have the material, if you're discussing it, thinking about it, your brain, when it starts to come out of that freeze, can then begin to react. Once you realize something's going on, brain freezes, starts to come out of the freeze 1 to 5 seconds. When it comes out of the freeze, now if you have plans and you've been dealing with this in your mind ahead of time, you're right into your plans. If not, your brain's got to make it up. And I mean, it's got to go through things like, what should I do now? Is the pastor or priest going to be okay with this? Is my team going to be okay? Is the congregation going to be okay? Should I do this? Do I have permission to do this? Too much for you to be thinking about at that moment. So we've got to have those plans ahead of time. Pre-planning is what makes us most successful. We have plans ahead of time. We discuss it with the pastor, priest. He or she gives us permission, tells us it's okay. And then our brain can relax and roll with it. And it's all about exercising our brains and giving it the ability to react much easier under pressure. And that's what we want to be. That's what we want to be thinking about. So, talking about this ahead of time, you and I talking about it right now, sharing this video with your team, having then discussions with your team leaders, with your church leaders, wherever you need to go and have a discussion with this stuff. But some of it seems to be pretty obvious to me. As we look into these types of things, let's look at some of these issues here. We can look at a mental health issue. All of a sudden a person comes in and they have a mental health issue, and you realize that. Now we begin to move into the mode. In fact, we just had a video last week that we talked about, we begin to ask questions. So we move into that asking questions and trying to decide if this is a mental health issue or if I'm just seeing and reading it wrong, and it begins to appear, am I going to let this person attend church, or am I going to ask them to leave? And we want to make these decisions ahead of time. We want to have permission ahead of time and know what we're going to do if we feel like this person may not be good for coming into our service. They may stand up and yell and interfere. They may become violent. I don't know what your evaluation might see. Sometimes it might just even mean, I've seen some folks that having mental health issues just meant that they laughed a little longer and a little louder than everybody else in the service. Maybe they talked to themselves Maybe they were talking about stuff. Maybe they even felt like they were talking to the pastor and responding to his questions. And so, but that's still disruptive to the service, to people, if they're laughing louder than everybody else or longer than everybody else. Maybe they appear to be angry. They're doubling up their fists kind of thing. Maybe they seem stressed. Maybe they're wringing their hands. Are you going to let them attend, or are you going to let them leave? And you can add other things into this. You can add in, how big are they? How upset do they seem to be? How stressed do they appear? And you begin to look at, maybe this person should be asked to not attend this week. And we can ask them some questions. We can go out, take them outside, say, hey, can we go outside and talk just a little bit? Ask them some more questions. Do that coffee walk that we talked about last week. Walk them on a tour and ask them questions. And so, it's an evaluation, but we want to be thinking about this ahead of time. Maybe they're just extremely emotional. Maybe it's not just angry. Maybe they're just overridden with sadness or something else. And so we need to evaluate, and we need to talk about it ahead of time. Are we going to let a person like that attend where they may be disturbing the service? And again, I'm not cold-hearted. We can still love on them. We can, minister to them, but maybe we minister to them outside. Maybe we have somebody make an appointment to minister to them during the week. In our situation at my church, we have a video room where they could go and sit, and it's not in the main auditorium. So it's a side room where they can sit. We can actually kind of keep an eye on them. It's close to our lobby where we're stationed, and so we could kind of keep an eye on them while they're watching the service live on that television. So, and then you get into some situation where somebody won't comply. Maybe they have a big backpack, and you ask to take a look at that backpack, look inside, and see what's in there. Maybe they refuse. So what are you gonna do with that? Are you gonna let them go on into service? Are you gonna ask them to put the backpack in a side room? Maybe they still refuse. So are you gonna then ask them to leave? At what point does that kind of stuff begin to happen? So these are things our mind needs to know. When does routine, loving on people, our ministry end with that person for the moment, and we begin to take action with them? So, and then we get into the more serious stuff here. We start looking at, this person actually tries to attack you. Now it's not just a decision of, are they going to leave, or are they going to be able to stay? Now we get into a situation where we're going to talk about, am I going to stop loving towards them and ministering to them? And am I going to now begin to defend myself, which might mean I have to go on the offense and literally attack them or try to control them so that I can defend myself and others? How does that look? We get into, maybe they get in your face and they're yelling at you and they're right in your face. And so how are we going to deal with that? Get help? Defend yourself. How are you going to defend yourself? How are you going to create some space between yourself and them? Now we look at, we could get into martial arts, defensive tactics, all of those kind of things, which does not necessarily show love towards somebody. We're not ministering to them at any point here. We're looking at now moving into action. So, and this is opinions, and this is stuff I'm suggesting for you are very important. It's a fine line here, but I think it's very important for when you need to take action. We need to discuss these things ahead of time. Maybe they have an actual weapon, and that gets more clear cut. Honestly, if they've got a stick and they're swinging it at people, or they've got a knife or a gun, that's a little bit more clear cut that we're obviously going to defend ourselves and defend others and try to control the situation. But these other things, trying to attack you, getting in your face, and some of these appears to have mental health, those are really, really important for us to be discussing ahead of time and know the line. What are we going to do? Are we going to let them stay? Are we going to put them in a side room where they can watch on television? Are we going to send them out in the parking lot, minister to them later? Or are we just going to kick them out, call the police, those kind of things. What are the different avenues? And I think this is important for us to be discussing as security team members, as ushers, greeters, leaders of the church. We need to be discussing this thing because it needs to be very clear to us what we're going to do if these things were to happen. And you probably have some other things, especially if you're in a busy metro area. You probably have other things that are occurring as well. So we want to discuss whatever those possibilities are, I believe, and get your mind ready ahead of time. That is so important. So thank you for spending time with me. We're making it short and sweet. I wanted to get to the point. I would strongly suggest you take a look at this video. We also have comments in the section below. In the comments below, there's things that you can look at for training, all those other things that we've got available to you and your team. So, but take a look at this video here. This one, I believe, is also very